This is the reading today from Newsela. What is heat energy? By Encyclopedia Britannica, adapted by Newsela staff on 9/9 of 2019. The word count is 777. The level is an 840 lexile. In physics, heat is energy that is transferred from one body to another because of the difference in temperature. People encounter hot and cold things every day, so most of us rarely think about heat. We know from experience that a steaming bowl of soup feels hot. A chocolate bar at room temperature seems less hot, and an ice cube feels cold. You might say the soup has more heat than the chocolate bar, while the ice cube has less. However, people often use the word heat when they mean temperature. They may also use the word heat when they are actually talking about thermal energy. Below, we will consider the differences between heat, temperature, and thermal energy. Temperature is a measure of hotness and coldness. If two objects at different temperatures are brought together, energy is transferred. Heat flows from the hotter object to the colder one. For example, a space heater gives off heat. It warms the cooler air around it. If a person holds an unwrapped chocolate bar, his or her hands transfers heat to the chocolate. Soon enough, this will cause the chocolate to melt. Heat transfer is a process. That is why it is not correct to describe an object as having heat. The transfer of heat is the transfer of energy. The energy stored in an object because of its temperature is known as thermal energy. Heat, temperature, and thermal energy are not the same, but they are closely related. They all have to do with small movements within matter. These movements are explained by the kinetic theory of matter. Temperature depends on how fast particles are moving. All matter, whether a solid, liquid, or gas, is made up of tiny particles such as molecules and atoms. These particles are constantly in motion. They travel, vibrate, and rotate in all directions. There are many different forms of energy. One of these forms is kinetic energy. It is the energy something has because of its motion. It is the kinetic energy of particles in matter that determines temperature, thermal energy, and heat. The temperature of an object is determined by how fast its particles are moving. The faster the particles are moving, the higher the temperature. Say you microwave a bowl of soup. This raises the temperature of the soup. It does so by speeding up the motion of the soup's molecules. The molecules in the hot soup are traveling faster than they did before the soup was heated. Temperature does not depend on the quantity or size of matter. An ice chip and a brick of ice are different sizes, yet they could have the same temperature if the average speed of the particles is the same. Thermal energy depends on quantity. On the other hand, thermal energy does depend on quantity. Thermal energy represents the total amount of kinetic energy of an object's molecules. A hot bowl of soup has more thermal energy than a cold bowl of soup. The total amount of molecules motion is greater in the hot soup. However, a hot bowl of soup has more thermal energy than a small cup of soup, even if they are the same temperature. Likewise, an iceberg has much more thermal energy than a hot bowl of soup. The iceberg is so much larger than the bowl of soup that the total amount of motion of all its particles is greater. This is true even though the soup has a higher temperature. Temperature is the measure of the overall speed of the particles' motion. Thermal energy is the total energy the particles have because of their motion. In the case of thermal energy, quantity makes all the difference. How does heat come into the picture? Thermal energy represents the amount of heat that something could possibly give off. Heat is the transfer of thermal energy from a hotter substance to a colder one. Transferring heat to a substance usually raises its temperature. In almost all cases, matter increases in volume when there is an increase in temperature. Volume is the amount of space a liquid, solid, or gas takes up. In gases, an increase in temperature leads to a larger increase in volume. As the molecules that make up the gas speed up, they also spread out. The transfer of heat to a solid causes it to expand as well. However, in solids, this expansion happens to a much smaller degree than in gases. Liquids generally behave like solids. They expand slightly when the temperature is raised. The reverse is also true. When an object gives off heat and its temperature drops, it contracts or gets smaller. Hey students, what's going on? I hope having this article read to you makes it a little bit easier on you. This whole situation with not being in school, I just got word that we're closed for the rest of the year, and it's unfortunate, but much smarter people than I are making the decisions for us, and they're doing it what's in the best interest to keep us all safe. And I know it's not what we expected, um, but we'll see you on the other side of this, and take care of yourself, take care of one another, and we'll see you on the other side of this. Later, and wash your hands.